everybody, this is Tyrannosaurus 86 here. We are going to be going over today one of everyone's favorite dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurus Rex. We'll be going over a few things, and I've got a few things to show. This is going to be a not so in-depth video of the species itself and partly of the family. To begin with, T-Rex was first named in 1905 or 1906. So it's been known for quite a while. It was actually, there were specimens discovered as early as 1870s, teeth particularly. But it was not formally named until 1905 as Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is a combination of Greek and Latin, which means the tyrant lizard king. The family itself is rather interesting in general. There are, at the moment, quite a few species of Tyrannosaurs. Everything from Proceratosaurus, which was a small, semi-small dinosaur from the Jurassic, all the way up to, well, the king himself, T-Rex. There were a lot of species in Asia as well as North America. Most of the known species in North America are from the American West, because that is where most of the fossil material from, most of the best fossil material comes from. It's easier to find fossils, in particular large specimens, in deserts and badlands situations. It's a lot more easier than finding them in forests, which dominate the eastern United States. That being said, there is one tyrannosaur that has been discovered from partial remains. Appalachosaurus was its name. So it was found in the southern United States, and it is also believed to have been prevalent through most of the eastern United States. During the Cretaceous, there was a large sea that divided the western North America and the eastern North America. It pretty much bisected the country. In that sea, there was Mosasaurus and Plesiosaurus, just all kinds of neat creatures, and we'll go into that in a later episode, I guess. But first, let's go over some anatomy of T-Rex. If a lot of you remember, the original posture of T-Rex was as standing upright tail dragger. That later became obsolete when science realized that the stature was wrong. Part of the reason it was mounted that way originally was because of bones. It was easier to mount bones that way. The fossils are extremely heavy, and to mount a 42-foot long lizard, or 42-foot long bird, let's say, in a horizontal, it's quite difficult, especially when using rock to do that. We now know that it was pivoted on its hips, had a massive tail to counterbalance the massive head. Head was around 5 foot long for adults. The anatomy changed throughout its life. When they were born, they were kind of gangly, long-legged creatures. I am going to show you a picture from a book. The book is called, if we can get this in, The Tyrannosaur Chronicles, and you can see the author's name. It's a really good book if you are interested in the paleobiology of the Tyrannosaur family. So, bear with me just a moment. This video is going to be quite rambly. I've not scripted it, and I'm not going to. So, a photo in this book shows 3 stages of the Tyrannosaurus growth. You have the very small, the subadult, and the adult. Now they would have got a lot smaller than that when they hatched, but this is just 3 different sizes that we have, that scientists have found, let's say. If you notice the subadult here, his legs are quite long, and his mass, even as from the head all the way, it's just not as heavily built as the adult version of the species. That being said, the adults were massive, extremely massive. Some estimates are up to 9 ton. They are the heaviest, calculated as the heaviest predator or carnivore to have walked. There are a few others to rival their length. You have Giganotosaurus from South America, who is estimated longer. Some say up to 50 feet. Those estimates could be exaggerated. Carcharodontosaurus from Africa, which is very closely related to Giganotosaurus. They are estimated to be around the same same length. Back in the 90s, Paul Sereno discovered a pretty intact skull of Carcharodontosaurus, and it's massive. But that being said, there is also, as we have right here, the tooth of the 3rd largest, or the longest carnivorous dinosaur to have walked the earth, or swim in this case. This is a small tooth of a Spinosaurus, made quite famous in the 3rd Jurassic Park movie. Spinosaurus aegyptius was said to be the one in Jurassic Park. When that movie was made, they were relying on insufficient data. Very few finds of Spinosaurus had been, very few examples of Spinosaurus had been found. As a matter of fact, just 1 at that time. And later finds recently have shed light that it was actually most likely a quadruped that spent the vast majority of its life in water. At least that is the hypothesis. We will never really know for sure. Paleontology is an extremely speculative science because, well, things are found that contradict each other. Now, in regards to the size of T-Rex, this here is a cast. It's not real. I wish I had a real version. This is a cast of a T-Rex tooth. This is just the crown. It would have been around the size of a large banana, the entire tooth, including the root. What is peculiar about this, is beyond its size, is the shape. Again, this is a cast. If you look at the cross section of the tooth, it is almost a D shape. So it has a flat surface, almost flat surface here, and a lot more conical surface on this side. It did have serrations along the edge. If you can see those, they are somewhat hard to see. No, again, this is a cast. That made this unique among predatory dinosaurs, in that if you look, take this is a dinosaur that would have fed on the carcasses of other T-Rexes, or of T-Rexes. This is an actual fossil. This is not a cast. This is a fossil of a raptor from the same time period. It is extremely small, so let me get it up closer to the camera. Focus. If you look at the cross section of it, it is smaller, almost blade-like. This one was for cutting through teeth. It is serrated, if you can see the serrations there. When this tooth was in the animal's mouth, it was most likely very sharp. There's a chance this is from what is known as a Dakotaraptor, which is one of the largest dromaeosaurs. Dakotaraptor and Utahraptor are somewhat close to the same size. I'm not going to say close, but they are large, much larger than the Velociraptor, which is very famous, everyone knows, but they are actually a lot smaller. If you look at the shape of get back on track, if you look at the shape of a Spinosaurus tooth, now this has been, when this tooth was found, it was broken, and they have glued it back together because that's what they do. If you look at this tooth, this is almost completely circular. It does still have some serrations, very lightly serrated, but it is conical, pretty much circular. This tooth was most likely designed for catching fish, kind of like a crocodile's tooth, whereas the Rex tooth, in particular T-Rex, well, that is the Rex, but it is believed this tooth was extremely good for crushing through bone. I mean, it was serrated, it would tear flesh, but it was not so much a steak knife as an ice pick, I guess you could say. The T-Rex skull was extremely heavily built, a lot more so than a lot of other dinosaurs. Its bite force was enormous, rivaling that of crocodiles. They are quite amazing carnivores. If you look here, this odd looking little thing here, this is another replica, I guess you could say. This is a replica. It was done from a scan. This is a T-Rex brain case. So a 5-foot skull had a brain case about this size. They were not they did not have the most brain to body ratio in dinosaurs. That is reserved for the Troodon families, actually. This one is somewhat unique. This may have been distorted. So this part here would have been the olfactory bulb that controls the animal's sense of smell. If I had a better picture, I would show you that, but their sense of smell was amazing. Back on this end, around in here, would have been their visual cortex. They, according to scientists, it appears that they have had pretty good smell as well as vision. Again, these are very small brains compared to the body size. I mean, a 42-foot animal with a brain a little over 6 inches. Anyway, so this indicates, at least hypothesizes, it allows me to hypothesize, as well as some others, that these animals were not completely scavengers because of the visual cortex. They were also quite adept at hunting. Once they got to a certain size, like the 42-foot long individuals, they may not have hunted all that much. They may have relied more on scavenging. The thing about the 42-foot animals is Sioux, which is one of the 2 largest T-Rexes ever found, and Sioux was the most complete at 98% complete. It is pretty much a complete skeleton. She was amazingly only 28-year-old when she had died. They tell this by counting growth rings in the animal's bones. A lot of animals deposit growth rings, much like trees deposit growth rings when they grow. So They done this by comparing it to they're comparing their bones to alligators and other animals that are related to them. That being said, Sue, a 42-foot giant, was 28-year-old. So these creatures grew extremely fast and were extremely violent. Sue was riddled with pathologies from fights and illnesses. Kind of like there was an Allosaurus found they called Big Al. BBC made a documentary, I guess you'd say documentary, a video of Big Al and his clumsiness. He was riddled with pathology himself. So these animals were huge. They did not start out that way. Around 66 million years, when T-Rex died out, as well as all other animals, they had reached the pinnacle of what they would become. They started out a lot smaller. You had Proceratosaurus, Dalong, Gunglong, most likely butchering those names. There were, later on, you had Albertosaurus, Gorgosaurus, Daspletosaurus. They were smaller versions of T-Rex. In China and Mongolia, you had Tarbosaurus batar, which was almost the same size as T-Rex and looked extremely similar, to the point where a lot of scientists were calling for them to be named the same. This is getting to be a long video, which I kind of did not want, but, well, here we go. T-Rex would have eaten, their diet would have consisted largely of hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs, and ceratopsians. Triceratops lived in the same time and place that T-Rex did. Triceratops may have been a little harder to kill than hadrosaur, but there is evidence on both counts from Edmontosaurus as well as Triceratops that T-Rex did actually predate on them, at least scavenge. There have been fossils found that have suggested that certain animals have survived a T-Rex attack because the bones had started to heal where they had where the T-Rex had bitten them. One in particular was a hadrosaur who's had its tail bit by a T-Rex. Speaking of tails being bit, there was a Tyrannosaur found. Can't quite remember when or how. I should have done more research. But anyway, that Tyrannosaur had its tail bitten off, most likely from another Tyrannosaur, and had survived. So these creatures were extremely interesting. They grew up in a world a lot different than ours, and they were enormous. I would not want to run into one in the middle of the forest. I'm rambling. But anyway, these creatures were amazing to me. They are one of my favorite dinosaurs, along with the Dromaeosauridae. They are, which were actually kind of close related. They're amazing. If you do want to read more about them, there is the Tyrannosaur Chronicles. There are others good books out there. Years ago, I'm actually looking at it on my bookshelf. Jack Horner and another paleontologist wrote a book called The Complete T-Rex. Now, the information in that book is quite dated as far as new research, but I would still suggest if you see that book and you're interested in dinosaurs, grab that book. It's a good read as well. they are, again, the information is dated, but you can get a jumping off point of that. Even the T-Rex Chronicles, that information's a little dated. The author suggests at times that T-Rex had feathers. There's a pretty good chance that it did at least have some feathers on its body, because older Tyrannosaurs from the Jurassic were found to have feather or proto-feathers. But recent skin impression finds of T-Rex suggest that it was actually had a more pebbled skin texture, at least on certain parts of the body. It could have been a mix of feathers and skin. These feathers were not originally did not originally evolve for flight. They were for they most likely for insulation and other things. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it if you like, subscribe to my channel if you would like. I know this was long and rambly and probably sucked, but anyway, I do hope that this informed you a little of the Tyrannosaurus Rex that everyone knows. Just leave a comment if you have a particular dinosaur or modern creature that you would like for me to discuss. I will do a little more research, and I will try to be a little more scripted on my next one. Maybe not scripted, but have a little better layout than this one. Anyway, thanks guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a blessed day.